Hit record. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We are glad that you joined us for the Community Resilience Model training this evening. My name is Liz Ann Roberts, and I am the Director of Coastal Georgia Indicators Coalition, which is the Family Connection Partnership in Chatham County. And we are hosting two Community Resilience Model trainings, one this evening and one tomorrow evening. And then we're hosting a meeting on Thursday for early care and learning providers and stakeholders to set some goals and strategies for the coming year. We're glad that you've joined us this evening, and we're grateful for this opportunity that has been afforded to us through Resilient Georgia and the Department of Early Care and Learning. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jordan Murphy, who is our instructor for this evening.
Thank you, Liz Ann. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jordan, and I will be teaching about the Community Resiliency Model. It's a very quick 1-hour presentation, but I do have a few experiential and engagement opportunities. So I'm hoping that you all will engage with me. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat, and toward the end, I will try to make every attempt to answer as many as possible. Also, at the end of the presentation, I'll have a link for an evaluation as well as decal CEUs. So with that, I will share my screen. All right, can you see my screen okay? Yes, okay. During this presentation, I'll touch lightly on the impact of stress and trauma, how it relates to mental and physical health outcomes, and we'll mostly put this presentation in the context of children, but also early care and learning professionals. We'll talk a little bit about current socio-environmental challenges. We'll talk about those mechanisms of healing via the wellness skills that I will describe. And I'll have an opportunity to go a little bit more in depth with 3 of the 6 CRIM skills, but I'll also point you to a resource toward the end if you're interested in getting more information about the skills. I do not have any conflicts of interest to disclose. A little bit of background, the Community Resiliency Model, it's a set of 6 wellness skills. These skills can be used across the lifespan. You don't have to know how to read. It can be used cross-culturally. Right now, it's being used in more than 100 countries across the globe, translated in, at last count, I believe, almost 20 languages. So it's a very cross-cultural model. And the reason is, as you will see, we talk and focus on the biology of the nervous system. So we all have a nervous system. So biological-based skills work well with different groups. Also, not every culture has a term for depression or anxiety, for example. And you'll see more about how this language is very neutral, helps to destigmatize mental health. This model and the skills can be used within any activities of daily living. They work really well in the classroom setting. So let's just give us a little bit of a foundation to start with. So a conventional approach when addressing behaviors, especially behaviors with kids, but also adults, was primarily built on assumption. So this assumption or idea that people are just bad, they need to be punished. And oftentimes it was more pointing the finger, like, what's wrong with you? In the last 20 years, a lot of research, especially in the area of neuroscience, has come out that has pushed us into being more trauma informed. So we have a greater awareness that, in fact, individuals are suffering. Stress and trauma early in life can shape the child's brain and development and how they grow, but also whether or not they thrive and reach their full potential. And so we have a lot more awareness. We ask different questions such as, what happened to you? However, as you'll see with the skills of the Community Resiliency Model, we are taking it that next step forward. So this is the action step. And even after 1 hour, you will have a few practical skills that you can start using immediately. We understand that individuals are in fact resilient. We can teach and learn skills to widen our resiliency. And we just ask different questions. What's right about you and what are your strengths? To keep it in the context of early care and learning, I would like for everyone to just consider those many staff-parent points of interaction. And one goal is, how can we infuse resiliency and resiliency-based wellness skills at each of those critical points? So pick up and drop off time, for example, can be quite stressful. Well, when we've used this model at early care and learning facilities, we have different conversations with parents. So for example, if I have a child who may have had a difficult day, I might tell the mom, you know, the kid today was just in his high zone or in his low zone. We use some wellness skills and this may work for him, or it appeared to work for him. And also the skills can be used in the family environment as well. This makes sure that families, staff, administrators, and also students and children can kind of get on the same language and talk about challenging behaviors in the classroom or just in social settings. So we want to start with just a few simple questions, and I encourage everyone to put your responses in the chat box. But what or who uplifts you? What or who gives you strength? What or who helps you get through hard times? Not to say for myself, I'm taking walks when it's sunny outside. I see music in the chat box. Any particular genre of music? My family and friends, exercise. Our brilliant students, music, husband, kids, God, gospel music, mother, son. Walking in the morning. A nice one. Singing. We'd love to hear you sing. Prayer. Family, friends, food, music, sewing, crafting. Accomplishing things at work. It's an excellent one. I am uplifted by my husband, family, friends. Faith and self-care gives me strength. Painting. So we have artists and lots of creative people on the call this evening. So you can see, as we are sharing those things and those people and those places that give us strength, we have these shared activities, right? And that's really what this community resiliency model is about. It's about finding those shared interests and then expanding them by using wellness skills or even teaching wellness skills. I also see walking, family, crafting. It looks like we have some drawing on the screen as well. I also see playing with my grandchildren, praying, gardening, community work together towards shared goals. Thank you. A second question. How do you define resiliency? And also, what is your definition of community resiliency? Our ability to bounce back stronger. It's a good one. Bounce back is probably the most common definition that we hear. The ability to persevere and not lose hope, but to be able to see a better ending. I like that. And think also, what about community resiliency? Right? So as you are working within your local communities and partners, how might you define community resiliency? The ability to set goals, reach for those goals, community resiliency, working together to create a better future, have to get through difficult times. Absolutely. So identifying the strengths within your local community. And in this case, getting everyone speaking the same language, which is the language of the biology of the nervous system, common reactions to stress and trauma, but wellness skills to help us balance our nervous system can be very helpful. So let's get right into the first key concept of CRIM, and that's the resilient zone. And so the resilient zone is also called our OK zone, depending on the age group that you work with. I work with a lot of adolescents and they call it their swag zone. They make up new terms depending on whatever the trend is these days. So they call it all sorts of things. In this case, we'll just call it the resilient zone or the zone of well-being. The blue lines represent our capacity or our bandwidth for the day. So not thinking about the week or all that we have to accomplish and do for the month, but just for the day. How much capacity do I have to handle whatever comes my way each day? The red line, and not the drawn on red lines, but the squiggly red line represents our nervous system. Throughout the day, our nervous system is constantly giving us energy, that's the upswing, taking away energy, that's the downswing. And we have hormones which help us to do this. So cortisol gives us that boost in the morning to get out of bed, to go to work. I don't know about you all, but after lunch, I kind of hit that downswing. I have a little less energy. Toward the evening, I get another boost to help me get home, get through Atlanta traffic, and get back to any evening activities that I have. And so our nervous system helps facilitate this natural balance. So the skills of the community resiliency model, one of the goals is to help us widen our resilience zone or expand our capacity for well-being. Now, the resilience zone is not a happy place. In fact, within our resilience zone and within our daily capacity, we can experience all types of emotions. Now, sometimes I might be angry if I get an email, for example, and I might have to slow my pace a little bit before I just send a response, but I'm still within my resilience zone because I'm being intentional. I'm taking the time to wait a little bit before sending the email. So it's absolutely okay to be angry or tired, frustrated, scared, worried. It's even okay for kids to have temper tantrums and sometimes do the arch back crying and banging on the floor. It's okay. They're just, feeling a range of emotions across their resilience zone. The thing is that when we are in our resilience zone, again, we can accomplish our task for the day, but also especially for children, they can still learn. Now, there are times where we just kind of get thrown outside of our resilience zone. Our balance is a little bit off, and we call this either being stuck in the high zone or being stuck in the low zone. When we are in the high zone, there are sometimes symptoms or responses. We might have a little bit of irritability, angry outburst. We might even experience physical pain. Children might have day or night accidents. They might have temper tantrums, all sorts of behaviors. All it means is that their nervous system is out of balance and they are now stuck in the high zone. On the opposite end, we see stuck in the low zone. And that looks like depression, sadness, maybe numbness, feeling clingy for some children, or even withdrawn. And again, this is all biological. Our nervous system is just a little bit out of balance. And in fact, we can use wellness skills to help us get back into the resilience zone. Now, when I show this image to children, also adults, it's very easy for them to point out and say, you know what, today I'm here, I'm stuck in the high zone, or today I'm here, I'm stuck in the low zone. I've met older youth as well as adults who say, I kind of just bounce between the two. I'm not sure that I'm in my resilience zone. Now, that's a completely different conversation than saying, oh, you have anxiety, you have depression. So this image and this model helps to take away that stigma. We all have a nervous system. Sometimes our balance is a little bit off. We have reactions, we have symptoms, but we can also use wellness skills to get us back into our resilience zone. A classroom tip, we have seen a number of teachers and students put the teachers put the resilience zone image up in their classrooms, and they have the students to place emojis wherever they are for the day. So a child might come in and really be in the low zone. You may find that later on in the afternoon, that same kid is sleeping during an assignment, right? Well, there's no need to shame the kid. He came in, he was in his low zone. He may have not gotten enough sleep the night before. And we can just be sensitive to that. Also, there are times when the entire classroom is just a little bit on the high end, right? And we can use a skill that all the students and the teachers can participate in, to help move us all back into our resilient zone. So there's lots of tips and ways that this model has been used in early care and learning environments. So another opportunity for engagement, what are some of those common reactions to stress and trauma if we consider being in the high or the low zone? And feel free to put your responses in the chat box. And you can just kind of pick from either of these categories. So what might be a common emotional reaction or behavioral reaction in children or adults? Crying, screaming. Yes. Shutting down, being angry, tantruming. Mhm. And if we can, oh, I see spiritual, withdrawing, stop praying, refusing to attend services, denying previous beliefs, crying, emotions. Absolutely. What about for our adult professionals? What are some common behaviors? Thinking it's the only answer or no answer, deflection. Absolutely. We have ruminating thoughts, even. And sometimes those behaviors that we shame, such as drinking more, eating less, relational withdrawal, pushing people away, projecting, substance abuse. Absolutely. So we have a list here, and I won't go through all of them. But this, again, these reactions are very common. When we find ourselves stuck in the high zone or the low zone, it's very uncomfortable, right? We would do anything to get back into our resilient zone because it's physically uncomfortable. We have symptoms, we can't sleep, our eating changes, we're tired all the time. The list goes on and on. And so again, this image just shows how common these responses are. But also, we won't leave you here with these common reactions. We have practical wellness skills, and these wellness skills won't fix the issue, but they can hold someone over until they are able to see a healthcare provider or another support person. There are also some very common reactions that are connected to our well-being. Sometimes we just have to be a little bit more intentional about bringing our awareness to well-being and those responses. So we all have shown up here on this call today. The pandemic has gone on for far longer probably than any of us expected. But we might find that in spite of all that's going on, I have more strength and courage. I'm more grateful for the relationships and friendships that I have. I've increased my faith. I've forgiven myself and others, and I've experienced some sort of transformation. Wow, I didn't know that I could push through something as difficult as this. So let's go into another concept. Why a biological model? I'm sure many, if not all on this call, have heard of adverse childhood experiences. So just briefly, we can think of this in three different levels. There are things that happen in the household. It could be a parent that has a mental illness, experiences of emotional, sexual, physical abuse, homelessness, and family member who's incarcerated. But these are factors that can make the home environment unsafe. It can also impact learning, but also it impacts a child's brain development and can lead to and contribute to physical and mental health outcomes later on in life. There are also things at the level of the community, historical trauma, substandard schools, experiences of racism, community violence, poor housing as well. And then lastly, we have things that happen at the environmental level. So we have the pandemic, but now we are seeing all of the tornadoes that happened in Kentucky and other places. And that's a pandemic on top of a tornado, right? And so we're looking at all of these experiences that happen on these different levels. And the research does show that there are physical and mental health outcomes. Again, thinking back to that common reaction to stress and trauma box. But we also know that we can learn new wellness skills. So that is that action item of the perspective shift. And in fact, a number of researchers are currently looking into what are those factors that buffer experiences of early adverse childhood experiences. And so Christine Bethel and her colleagues, they are measuring PACEs, or positive childhood experiences. So there's a list of 7 items that they're asking. It includes things like mentors. Probably many of you on the call who have mentored a young child or just reached out with a phone call or a hug or just even a smile. But these experiences help to buffer adverse experiences. So again, it's not about fixing the issue necessarily by using this approach, but it can serve as a buffer, and it can serve as a new line of communication to help children push through some difficult times. Christine Bethel, she defined resilience as staying calm and in control when faced with a challenge. And her research showed that children 6 to 17 who were resilient, they were able to reduce the impact of adverse childhood experiences, but also they were better at learning, right? So they had improved school engagement. So to sum it up, adversity is not destiny. Difficult things happen, challenges happen, but we can all learn wellness skills to help push us through these difficult times. So when we think, and as we are moving into the skills, CRIM is all about biology. So there's no mental weakness here. We're focusing on the nervous system. We know that there are common responses, and we can just use these simple wellness skills. The first one being tracking, which we'll talk about, but it helps us to read our nervous system. So we know, am I stuck on high? Am I stuck on low? Or am I in my resilience zone? So again, all biology. 2 big terms, neuroplasticity, neurogenesis. All it means is our brains can grow over the span of our lifetime. We used to think that you get a certain age and that's kind of it for you. We know that's not in fact the case. We can create new neurons that help us to expand our well-being. So we use Dan Siegel's 3-part brain model, and I'm just going to demonstrate with my hand, and I invite you all to as well. It's a really simple model. You can do it in the classroom. But we break up the brain into 3 simplified parts. So here at the bottom, we have our survival brain. This is automatic. It carries out our fight, flight, and freeze responses. This survival brain, if you look at the list here, it also controls our breathing. And this is probably the one aspect of our survival brain that we have a little bit of control over. This is where a little mindfulness comes in, like take a deeper breath, or count your breaths, or steady your breathing. It's the only part of our survival brain that we have some level of control over. Our limbic or emotional area is our thumb, and this helps us to assess risk in our immediate environment. It's also linked to our memories. And so sometimes memories can trigger a response. It also is where our feelings, our attachment, our emotions are. And then lastly, we have our cortex, or our thinking brain. You turn it this way, it kind of looks like a brain. But our thinking brain helps to integrate all 3 parts of our brain. It also houses our thought, speech, beliefs. So when we are within our resilience zone, all 3 parts of our brain are working together and functioning. When we are outside of our resilience zone, the lower parts of our brain dominate, and they actually kick our thinking brain offline, or we flip our lid. So the wellness skills first primarily speak to our survival brain, and that's with the first skill of tracking, because the language of the nervous system is sensation, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. So if we think back to that natural balance of our nervous system, the upswing is like the accelerator, or the sympathetic branch of our nervous system. This increases our blood pressure, our stress hormones, our breathing, heart rate. It gets us going. We don't need to digest if we are running a race, for example, or if we are responding to a bear in our environment. The downswing is our parasympathetic, or the brake of the nervous system. And this does just the opposite. We can decrease our breathing, our heart rate, our blood pressure, as well as our hormones. What I like to point out on this slide is that we often notice our accelerator a little bit more often than the brake of our nervous system. And that's really important to know, because the brake helps us to prepare for rest. It helps to balance our nervous system. right? It kind of puts the brake on and takes away a little bit of energy so that we can rest and digest. Many of the skills of the community resiliency model help us to jumpstart the brake of our nervous system. Now, if we look at this image, I'm sure many of us can see one or two images that we may fall into or that we've seen children fall into. So our survival responses, and again, I'm referring to the survival part of our brain, carries out fight, flight, or freeze, and then also tend and befriend. So when I'm talking to a parent, for example, I might just say, you know, your child, she just had a flight response. She popped up from the table and she ran into the bathroom, but something in her environment just made her a little bit stressed. We used a skill, and here's the skill that we use. There's a free app for it. I suggest that you try it at home. It may work within your home environment. Again, that gets us all speaking the same language. It also decreases stigma because I don't have to say, you know, your kid just swiped at another kid or hit another kid. Your kid just had a fight response. Let's use some skills to help with that. A little bit more about tend and befriend. Tend and befriend is a survival response as well. It's not talked about as much as the other three, but we see this often in two ways. We can see it with a child who might be tending and befriending a perpetrator, even if it is their primary caregiver. In the cases of child neglect, oftentimes we see that the child might still cling to and be affectionate toward the person who might be hurting them. And so we like to point that out because, again, it's a survival response, and we see it in the case of domestic violence as well. We bring it up so that we can help reduce shame around it, so that we get services to those who need it. This tend and befriend response is also facilitated by hormones, which is oxytocin. It's also called our bonding or our love hormone. And this prompts those social behaviors. So we may even see a kid that will befriend a bully, for example, kind of like that protection in numbers, or maybe they won't bully me if I align myself with him or her. Oxytocin, importantly, also helps to kick the downswing or that brake of our nervous system. So it's a really important hormone. And we can use this in ways that helps us expand well-being toward resiliency. So we just like to add the tend and befriend in there as well. Lastly, there's modeling. So if I am in an environment with lots of kids and I just completely flip my lid, I just have a reaction and I model some unfortunately bad behavior, which I have done before, little kids are often watching me and they might model that behavior as well. However, what I know now is that, you know what, I can say, even to the kids, I can say, you know what, Miss Jordan was just outside of her resilience zone. I was stuck up here. Now I'm going to use this skill to get me back into my resilience zone. Would you like to do it with me? What that demonstrates to a kid is I can get outside of my resilience zone. I won't be shamed. And this adult will help me with a skill. So it works really, really well, not only for the kid, also for me. I use the skills also. Okay, so we keep talking about the skills. Let's get into them. So here is a list of the 6 skills. Tracking is the foundational skill. It's used with every other skill. Again, we'll go into tracking, resourcing, grounding, a little bit of help now, and I'll point you to the app for gesturing and shift and stay. Skill 1 is tracking, also called reading sensations. So typically, if someone says, how was your day today? I might say, I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm doing well, I'm happy. Those would fall into the thinking, feeling categories. Very rarely do people ever say, you know, my muscles are relaxed, my heart rate is down, I'm not sweating, I feel great. We don't often talk about physical sensations. And so with this model, we are actually focusing on that third portal that we sometimes miss over, which is the portal of sensation. But again, sensation talks to our survival brain. So when we speak the language of sensation, we're talking to our survival brain. There's a little bit of research in this area. So for every emotion or feeling that we have, there is a corresponding bodily sensation. So about 700 individuals were shown images of emotional content, and they were asked to draw on a body map where they noticed that emotion or that feeling in their body. And you can see, even across a wide cohort of individuals, there were some common responses. So even as I look at this, anger, oh my goodness, I know when my cheeks are getting red and my ears are getting hot, my hands get sweaty. And you can see those areas on this image lighting up. What that shows is that the yellow, the red, the orange, that's higher activation or more of that upswing of the nervous system. The blue is more of the downswing of the nervous system or more of stuck on low, and then black is neutral. And so you can see for all of these different emotions, sometimes we might say, like, let's say depression, for example, I'm feeling blue, I don't want to get out of bed, my limbs feel heavy, or I feel cold. And again, it's because all of these emotions have a corresponding body sensation associated. So tracking is noticing physical sensations happening in the body at the present moment. We then determine if the sensation is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and we stay with the sensations that are pleasant or neutral. We don't focus in and track the unpleasant sensations because that can actually send us outside of our resilience zone, and it may overwhelm our nervous system. One way that we can start with tracking is just a curiosity question. What do you notice happening on the inside? So that's that portal of sensation. And the second question, are the sensations pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? So how do I track? Well, I can observe. I'm sure many of you have been in conversation with other individuals. You might notice changes in their body posture, their muscles, relaxation or tension, breathing, skin color. You can also track by just your own internal climate. So as I'm speaking and talking to someone who's right across from me, oh boy, sometimes I can feel a little something in my belly, or I might notice my breathing changes. Or if I see someone yawn, I might yawn, right? And the third way to track is just person self-report. And this is, again, in conversation. I might ask a colleague as they're telling me, a really funny story. What do you notice happening on the inside? Are the sensations pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? So here's just a list to help us develop our sensory language. Again, we typically go to emotions and feelings, but here's just a menu of items to start developing the language of sensations. This, again, works really well in the classroom. You can post these words up and just ask those kiddos, when you put your emoji in the high zone, where do you notice that in your body? Is it in your belly? Is it in your head? Sometimes kids say, I have a tummy ache, and they can point to that and also name it. So we'll do a really quick tracking exercise, and I'll ask you to join in with me. But if everyone could rub their hands together really quickly. Right, and then pull them apart. What do you notice happening on the inside? And feel free to put it in the chat. Vibrating, warm to cool, tingling, warmth, warm. When I don't put in any lotion, it feels a little scraggly, right? A little rough for me. Warm to cool, vibration, tingling, warm feeling. Great, so that is tracking. Now, how often do we don't hardly ever do that, right? But again, noticing physical sensations can help us to track. Am I in my resilience zone? Am I stuck in my high zone? Am I stuck in my low zone? Again, that's the first skill, and it's used with all the other skills. The second skill is resourcing, and the best way to learn how to use the skill of tracking is through a resource. So I'll ask you to put in the chat, what might be pleasant for the kiddos in this image? And think about that sensory language. What might be pleasant for these kiddos? The warmth of the sun. Cool water. I imagine that they're probably at some point going to splash it and just watch the water flop all around. Cool water. Water play. Mhm. What about some of the textures, the different textures in the environment? What type of sensory things might be pleasant for these kids? We might think about the difference in their hats. One kid has on a leather hat and the texture of that versus the jean hat. The difference between the stone versus the water versus the grass, but also the companionship. I'm sure at some point they might be giggling and laughing, and they could probably sense that in their little bodies also. The Crocs. I can't tell you how many times I've shown this picture and someone always points out the Crocs. I'm sure they have their own sensory experience. Enjoying the fish, textures of the rocks, grass, plants, absolutely. So a resource is any person, place, thing. It could be a memory or it could be a part of yourself that gives you a sense of calm, makes you feel pleasant, peaceful, strong, or resilient. Yes, also smells in the environment is a really great sensory experience. Resources can be real or imagined. I can't tell you how many Black Panthers and Spider-Mans I've met in my day. Resource can be internal or external. It could be just a personal characteristic about yourself. I get up every morning and I walk, and I make myself strong enough to do that even when I don't feel like it. So again, internal or external, I enjoy going to this place or that place with this person. We always want to make sure that we acknowledge, especially because of COVID, that a resource can have this dual nature. Last I checked, almost more than 100,000 children lost a parent or a caregiver during COVID. And so what we've seen is that for some kids, if we're asking them to describe a resource, they may say, well, my mommy or my dad. And what we know is that that can be really difficult because their parent was in fact their resource, but now that person is no longer here. One way that we can navigate this in a way that's sensitive to the child or even to an adult or a friend is that we can acknowledge if there are any tears, right? What do you notice? What do you notice happening on the inside? We can ask resource-based questions like, tell me about your favorite memory with this person. If that person were here right now, what would they say? We also are always invitational. If the resource is too difficult to ask someone to track that resource in this present moment, we invite them to think of another resource and track that, right? So we're sensitive enough to acknowledge a resource if it's difficult, but also to shift so that we don't overwhelm someone's nervous system if that is appropriate for the situation. The third skill is grounding. Grounding is the direct contact of the body or part of the body with something that provides support in the present moment. So when our relationship to the earth is safe, our other relationships develop optimally. We're not worried about the past or thinking about the future. We are just grounded in the present moment. So even as you all are sitting here and wherever you are, you might be sitting, standing, you might be walking around. What do you notice happening on the inside? What are those points of contact that your body is making with a surface? And as you are noticing, what's happening on the inside, describe it. Is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Is it neutral? I'll give an example. I have this pillow right behind me that's kind of providing some support for my back, and I would describe it as pretty pleasant. What about for you all? Feel free to put a response in the chat if you're noticing anything. You're calm and relaxed. And I'll just ask a follow-up question that you can just think about. Where do you notice that calm and relax in your body? I see my chair is hard. Yes, absolutely. Is there any place in your body that is more comfortable or at least neutral? My feet sinking into the chair, is that pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? So with all of these skills, again, with resourcing, with grounding, we are always tracking our nervous system to know, am I in my resilient zone? Am I stuck on high, stuck on low? Maybe I should use a skill. You can ground in many positions, whether walking, paying attention to your steps, laying down on a surface, floating in water, standing against a wall, or even sitting in a chair. Some of you, for example, might have a favorite spot on your sofa that you go to at a certain time of the day. It could be a very grounding experience for you. So the only next thing to add is just ask yourself those sensory questions and track your nervous system. What do I notice in my nervous system as I sit in my favorite chair? So help now, we always like to try and mention help now if we can. It is for those really heightened moments of stress. So when we are really stuck in the high zone or the low zone, the help now skills can act like an emotional CPR. And many of these skills help to either increase activation if we are really stuck in the low zone, or decrease activation if the accelerator of our nervous system is stuck. So we might invite ourselves or even a child to listen to the sounds in the room and name them. Maybe it's the bird chirping, maybe it's the printer going, maybe it's water running. We might count backwards from 10. Pushing against a wall is a really popular one, and it's because it activates those large muscle groups, and it can help to bring our nervous system down and kick on the brake of our nervous system. You might already be asking someone who comes to your office or your classroom, would you like a glass of water, if you notice that they are just having a challenging time. Well, when you drink a cold glass of water, again, you're kicking on the parasympathetic or the brake of your nervous system and helping to bring activation down. Now, these skills, they work in the moment. They may or may not work for every child or every adult. So a lot of times I'll just kind of go through each of them until I find something that works. If you like the poster and if you like the model, feel free to visit the traumaresourceinstitute.com. They do sell these posters. You can put them up in your classroom, on your refrigerator. If you have a teen and you want to put it on their wall, they'll let you, or even within your office. So what's next? How are we even using this model? Well, firstly, I would invite everyone to look for the iChill app. I might sound like a marketer in just a second, but I'm not. But the iChill app can be found on the App Store as well as Android. The skills will be covered within this app, and it'll reinforce all that we discussed today. There's also some practice and there's some images within this app. We encourage you to share it with family, friends, and really you can start downloading it and using it right away. We also want to point out that learning these skills can help us stay in our resilient zone if we put on our own resiliency mask first. I have to say that, as a healthcare provider during the pandemic, one thing that helped push me through is just teaching the skills, just teaching them, getting them out there to as many people as would listen. And I felt strongly about that because I have been using the skills for myself. So the more we use them for ourselves, the easier it is to stay in our resilient zone, but also we take it that next step and it's like giving a gift to someone, right? Here's some wellness skills that we can do together, or I can just give them and teach them to you for use whenever you need it. We have research that shows that even after 1 hour, individuals can consider themselves a CRIM guide. What that means is you learn the skills, you practice them, and then you share them with others. Now, when we are sharing these skills, we always stay one step behind. We don't interpret or assume meaning, especially around someone's resource, even if that resource is something that we might think or label as unhealthy. We ask open-ended questions. We ask those questions about tracking sensations, but we give people time to develop those sensations. We're non-judgmental. And again, we don't direct the conversation. We're not prescriptive. We just give a few suggestions. Would you like to try these wellness skills or not? Currently at Atlanta Children's Shelter, I'm on site twice a week using this model. So I have introduced the model to the staff and the administrators first. For those kids who are introduced to the skills but still need one-on-one support, whether they need screening for development or whether they just need some one-on-one skill development, that's where I come in. And we also try to work with the families to teach them this model so that the families, the teachers, myself, and also the students were all speaking the language of wellness. Here is just a chart for anyone that is interested on the evidence supporting the model. So a lot of the research around CRIM is still in its early stages, but we have to date completed 2 randomized controlled trials. And as you look at this chart, you see that there are some similarities across these 4 studies. The last study, 259 hospital workers, that took place during the COVID-19 pandemic. What we found is that even with just 1 hour of teaching, healthcare providers increase their well-being, they decrease their secondary traumatic stress, they also reduce their physical symptoms, so headache, stomach ache, changes in eating. But importantly, and probably what might be important for this group, is that they were also able to improve their work engagement. These findings of the last study are not yet published, but we hope that more research is coming out to support the evidence base for these skills. You can always feel free to reach out if you have questions. If you're interested, we offer longer workshops, about 3 hours for experiential practice, where we go into small groups with a certified teacher. If you love the model and you want to jump right in, we encourage you to visit the Trauma Resource Institute and become a certified CRIM teacher. We would love to see certified CRIM teachers in every county in Georgia. So with that, I will stop sharing and we have some time for questions. And I will also put a link to the evaluation as well as CEUs in the chat.
As we're getting ready for questions, I just wanted to say to the group, if you would just, I'd love to know what counties are, because we pushed this out regionally, so it would be not just Chatham, but it would be other counties in our region. So if you are, I'd love to hear where you're from, so that we make sure that we connect back with you. We are just completing a grant to Resilient Georgia, and we will be offering the 1 hour CRIM training, the 3 hour CRIM training, and an opportunity for people to become CRIM certified in each of the 13 counties that are in our region, which would include some of the ones that you guys are from. So please still get in touch with your Family Connection partnership in your county, and you'll be hearing more about that in the coming year. So we're very excited about offering CRIM at a higher level and being able to share what you guys have learned tonight with other people in your county. Any questions? I know somebody's got a question someplace. You can type it in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Or if you just want to give Jordan a shout out, I thought she did an excellent job tonight. What I love about this is that it's instantly usable.
Yes.
Start using it tomorrow, or tonight, or in your classroom tomorrow. So we'll be following up with you, and we appreciate you being with us tonight as we find resources that we feel like you may want or need. We'll be happy to share those with you. And we're seeing some chats come through, Jordan. People are saying they can't wait to use the information. They really enjoyed it. It was very informative. Someone said, I'm ordering the posters tonight. So thank you, Becky, for that. And this is really wonderful. So for those of you who are on the call this evening, we'll also be sending you the links just in case you need them. But if you make sure that you click on the CEU form, and Jordan, did you put in the link to the evaluation?
Yes, I think one person said they couldn't access it. Is anyone else having that? Let's see.
It is not taking me there.
Huh. Okay, so I'll have to fix that. It says it's unlocked, but I will correct that and resend it to you, Lizanne.
Wait, it's loading now.
Jordan,
Oh,
I just clicked on it and it took me to Google Forms.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll repost it. And the evaluation works also?
So I'm looking at the evaluation right now. Let's try the CEU form. Oh, brother.
The CEU form is telling me I need permission. The eval form was not a problem.
Well, I'll send them both out and try to figure out what's going on with
Yeah.
the link.
Same thing for me, and a few other people. The CEU form is not, it says you need permission.
Got it. All right, I will correct that and get it out to you all. Sorry about that.
Okay. So if you, Jordan, if you'll make sure the evaluation form is working. And so if everyone would click on that and do your evaluation this evening. We'll also after tomorrow night be doing a drawing for $100 gift certificate. So if you see an email come from me on that, please answer me so I can get your information so I can mail you your gift certificate. So it'll be a gift card.
And I believe I fixed the CEU error, so hopefully.
Can you post it again?
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I dialed in because of the location I'm at, so I'm unable to see anything that you have uploaded on the chat.
Okay.
I wasn't able to connect through the regular Zoom. Is there any way I can get this information sent to my email if I let you all know it was me, or how do I need to do that?
Yes. Hold on just a moment.
Okay.
Rachel, you write it down and I'll write it down as well. Tell me your name. What's your name?
I'm sorry, I have to spell it. It's Quaeisha, and my last name is Oglesby. OG as in girl, LE, S as in Sam, B as in boy, and then Y if you need that.
Okay, what's your email address?
It's Evans, like Evans County, Evans, EV as in Victor, ANS, and then Isha, EIS as in Sam, HA, at gmail.com.
Okay. We will send the information to you. I would encourage you also, we'll send the recording to you so that when you're at a place that you can review it, because I think you'll be able to see, the slides and that kind of thing that'll be able to help you. Are you an early care and learning provider?
Yes, in-home.
Okay. Well, thank you for getting on tonight. Is there
Yes,
anyone
ma'am.
else who has any questions? Or comments? Okay,
All right, and I'll just recopy the CEU link. I think someone else
Okay.
mentioned it. There you go.
excellent, it works.
Great. Well,
Thank
thank
you,
you
Jordan.
all for participating. We are very excited again to get this out to as many people across Georgia as possible. Feel free if you have any questions to reach out. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jordan. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you. And Lizanne, I will still send it to you via email just in case you want to send it out to those who attended.
Okay. Well, we had a good representation from the neighboring counties, which is really great.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Hi, Jordan. This is Molly with Loop It Up. How are
Hi.
you?
Good. Very nice to meet you. I was
Nice.
wondering who had my name.
I just like realized that it said your name under mine. I should have changed it. I don't know why it says your name, but
That's okay.
nice.
Nice to meet you.
Glad to be affiliated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
Thank-
nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
No problem. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to putting all this into immediate use. So thank you.